So, I touched on this earlier. Many of you have agreed to serve as fiduciaries. That means you're going to accept responsibilities to help make sure that when there's an incapacity, somebody simply doesn't feel they can handle their affairs on their own anymore or don't want to, or when there's been a death, that you're going to help make it work. Okay? We all want you to know where your key instructions are. This is one of the reasons we have the document vault, because if we don't know where you put your binder, at least we can find a good executed copy of the documents. The one thing I would like to touch on now, most of you are in possession, virtually all of you are in possession of the original of your will. We don't keep wills. Please know what you did with the will. Okay? Because should we need it, the only thing the court wants to accept is that original. So, if you don't know where it is, let us know, and we'll do a new one. Okay? Not to suggest that anybody's lost it, but it's come up a couple of times this year. Okay? We're going to try and help you understand how trusts work, how POAs work during disability. We're going to talk a little bit about the legislatures trying to fix it, their statute. We're going to cover how we identify your property and what happens, and then in some detail what your duties are at death. So, pre-planning for a smooth transition. We know that and many of you from your work lives and whatever know that if you have a plan, that you're going to get a better result than if everything is done just ad hoc. So we've got some places where we start. One, you're alive and well, lifetime. That's really, we all think that's easy, right? And because if this part's hard, it's downhill from here. Okay? If you're alive and not so well, that's when we're talking about incapacity, that's what we're talking about. You've got some either physical or cognitive issues that are impacting how things need to be done or what you can currently do yourself. And then at death, settlement. Because I'd like to tell you that those documents that we've done, they grow legs and they run around and do stuff. I haven't got that quite automated yet. There are things that have to be done. Rebecca's going to help us understand what all of those are and how we make the transition. Now, have you noticed that every time the legislature meets, they pass new laws? And it always is an improvement, right? No. And Congress, well, they keep making changes. I've often thought that the most effective legislative approach would be to close Congress and the state legislatures for like 5 years. Okay? That's not going to happen. So they keep changing the rules. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And one of the reasons that we know that many, many estate plans fail is because it was approached as a transaction. Here's a document, it takes care of everything forever. That is not my life experience. Some of you, have heard me talk about some of the things I've been through personally and with clients. Stuff keeps happening. Because if it's not the legislature, if it's not Congress, we have a court system? The courts sometimes reinterpret the rules. Okay? In fact, by way of an example, I've long was concerned about paying life insurance to a revocable trust because I thought it might be possible for a creditor to get to it. But the conventional legal wisdom was I didn't need to worry because that didn't happen. And about 5 years ago, there was a case in Florida where the court said, oh, yes, your creditors, the decedent's creditors could get to all the life insurance paid to his trust. And that caused me to say, we got to fix that. And part of the LifeBridge program is when we see these kind of changes, if we can, in fact, see how to respond to that without having to do individual consultation, because we thought that everybody would be more comfortable if they knew their plan protected their life insurance. And we were right. And so we figured out how to draft around that so it won't happen to our clients. And then all our LifeBridge clients got updated trusts to deal with that problem. So, and if the IRS ever changed the rules, and it's just endless. Now, maybe it's because I'm not 25 anymore, but I really believe that not only is change inevitable and unavoidable, the rate of change is accelerating. And so that's another reason why we have this, is trying to respond proactively instead of reactively to the threat of change. Funding. We spend a lot of time. In fact, Jeff, this is one of his principal roles in the firm, is helping clients understand and do what's necessary to get their assets owned, beneficiary designations arranged, so they actually work with the planning documents. To do that is probably the single largest cause of why most plans fail. Because trusts don't control documents that are owned by the trust or payable to it, and the same is true for wills. We prefer to work with whoever your advisors are. And if you don't have advisors and we talk and you think you need one, we try and make appropriate introductions. Because there are a lot of moving pieces in your life. And if somebody else is having to step in and take care of it, it's good if we know who those people are. Oh, and by the way, if your family don't know who you're relying on, it might be good to tell them. Or you can leave them to just kind of sort it out whenever. And it's good to let the family know who you expect to do what. We've given you some tools, and we're happy to talk to you more about how to do that. This is a critical part of it. So, incapacity. We've said that this is a huge concern. It's not a big concern at 25, even though we certainly see it. Okay? But, disability is not necessarily permanent, but it happens. The youngest totally disabled client I had was 27. Fell off a ladder trying to fix a gutter. Broke his neck, became a quadriplegic. Sometimes it's just because you're going to be gone for a while. And if you're taking an extended trip to Europe or China or whatever, let us know. If there's things that need to be done, we can show you how your documents can respond to that and what we need to do. We occasionally have folks who are gone because of work for extended periods of time. You may have a surgery plan that the rehabilitation period, whatever, is extensive. All of these are different forms of incapacity that can be temporary. Everybody here has healthcare instructions. It's about who is going to make decisions for you when you can't do it on your own. But maybe one of the most important things, have you heard of HIPAA? Yeah. In fact, anytime you go, the doctors and medical facilities were scared to death of HIPAA when it first came out in 2003, and then they figured out a solution. When you go into their office, they push a piece of paper at you, ask you to sign it, and say it's your privacy notice. Actually, that's not for you, that's for them. So if they talk to somebody you wouldn't want them to, you've already agreed it's okay. Okay? So you all have, or virtually all, have a customized HIPAA authorization that says, here's who I want to be able to talk to my medical providers. Not make decisions, but talk to them. And the better form, instead of signing that document that the doctor's office pushes at you, you say, hey, here's mine. And you can have them access it via the card you have, that's the legal directives card I mentioned earlier. We have tried to customize your advanced directives. This is the healthcare power, the living will. And how old should somebody be to have a living will? No opinion?
21. 18.
Andy's voting for both 18 and 21. Okay? Really, in Connecticut, if you're 18 years old, you should have advanced medical directives. The law that gave, the cases that gave us the law that allows us to appoint somebody to make our health care decisions, that allow us to have a living will, in every situation, the named cases, Cruzan, Quinlan, Shivo, all women, young women who had a catastrophic accident or health event in their 20s. I was interviewed a couple of years ago several times on TV, and one of the things the commentators, the newscasters, ask about is how old should somebody be before they do this kind of planning. They looked shocked when I said 18. Actually, afterwards they told me, are you really serious? Okay? And in part it was because guess what they had done? Nothing. You all have solved that problem. You've done it. I'm going to encourage you, if you're here and you don't have these, you need to take care of it. DNR is mentioned up there on the slide. That's do not resuscitate. That's an order entered by the doctor. You can get a home, at-home DNR, but the thing you got to know, if you don't have these things in place, you do not want to be resuscitated. Absent having talked to your physician, got the appropriate medical orders, and have the bracelet that says, I don't want to be resuscitated if I'm home, the EMTs, the paramedics, are obligated to do everything they can to get you back to the hospital breathing and your heart beating. This only happens if you proactively do something about it while you're well. Okay? When you're alive and not so well, how do we know if you're disabled? Because I know if I was to ask my wife, am I competent or incompetent, what would she say? Okay? Actually, the same thing she said this morning when I came back to get my phone because I forgot it. Okay? Okay? We have to have, in planning, we have to have a process to decide whether or not you can continue to manage your affairs. What we have done for most of you is we have provided in your trusts for a disability panel. People that you have faith and confidence in. In many cases, we've provided that a doctor must also be involved. And when they say, not only have you lost your marbles, you're not even looking for it any longer, that once that determination is made and properly documented, whoever you've named to help out, your successor trustee, your agent under a power of attorney, even it could be healthcare, but healthcare is a little different. That individual that you've named or individuals can step up and begin taking care of things. And I want to touch on that healthcare power. We've seen some people who've kind of resisted doing it. But I also want this for people who know they've been named as healthcare agent. The authority of the agent to act does not come into being until a doctor says, Hank can't process the information about his care well enough to make decisions. Up until that determination is made by a doctor, the healthcare agent doesn't have any authority. Not only does a doctor have to have made that evaluation, they've got to put it in the medical records. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind, both if you're named as an agent or if, as all of our clients have named an agent. Okay? When disability is permanent, that's a different process. Okay? Again, we will have used the disability panel to make that determination. We would, for your trust, we have to provide an affidavit of successor trustee. Whoever's been named as successor has to accept the job. Because unlike when you were 10 years old, when dad or mom told you got to do something, well, this is something you actually have to agree to do. Okay? But if you think you might not agree, we should have a conversation about that, or you and your loved ones. Locate your trust documents. While we've got digital copies, and in the contract world, most corporate contracts are done digitally, signed digitally. The world of estate planning hasn't moved to where digital documents, especially that original will I mentioned earlier, are what third parties or courts are going to want to see. Courts are the real difficulty. Okay? You have to keep good records. This means that you have to keep your family members' assets and income separate from yours, and you have to account for what happens with it. Okay? And we may, because it's an incapacity, we may want to consider gifting or other planning. Most people's documents have the authority for us to visit this and do what makes the most sense at that point in time for your loved one. I believe that when somebody's incapacitated, the most important thing is if we help make sure, that you help make sure, that they get the best possible care consistent with what their wishes are. What do you think the secret is to knowing what a loved one's wishes are? Ask them. And if you haven't been asked, tell them. Have a conversation. One of the things that we're working on is to make having this family conversation about these things a part of the LifeBridge program, because as many years that I've been saying you got to talk to one another, well, families should talk to one another. We still find too many of them that are uncomfortable, that aren't following through and really having that conversation. We want to encourage you to do that, because it's only if your loved ones know what your wishes are they going to be able to carry it out.